Shakespeare Company, possibly the most influential and famous bookstore in the world, where the likes of Hemingway, Ezra Pound, Gertrude Stein sat around and talked about the state of literature. And this week on the Gazebo show with Jimi, Fritz and Gorilla Billy, we'll be talking about the state of literature, what it is, and who cares. Okay, welcome to the third edition and the first season of the inaugural season of the third show.
Of the Gazebo show.
Exactly, with Jimi, Fritz.
And Gorilla Billy.
All right. Okay, and this show is going to be about, we're going to talk about literature.
Yeah.
So first of all, we're going to figure out what is literature. What is it? And who gives a damn? It applies to imaginative works of poetry and prose distinguished by the intentions of their authors and the perceived aesthetic excellence of their execution. So it's more about the excellence of the execution, which is what I've always said, that literature is about the writing and not about the stories and characters and plot. Those are incidentals. Okay. Literature is a communication of thoughts and ideas and feelings. And that's coming from the author. So you're getting the thoughts and feelings of the author. Mm-hmm. And I think that's writing that's considered to be a work of art. So basically we're talking about artistic expression, and in this case of the author. Mm. So what you do is when you read real literature, you get a vicarious experience of the mind of the author. So if you read Bukowski, you need a hot shower afterwards and rehab. If you read Vonnegut, you feel like you spent a weekend at the summer house with Vonnegut.
Yeah, or in a carnival.
If you read Dostoevsky, you feel like you're living in a dusty basement wearing an overcoat.
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I mean, it's a wonderful psychological study, and he makes the comparison of Marlowe going up the Congo River to early Romans going up the Thames and finding barbarians in what we now consider high culture.
Right. And the book is actually narrated on a boat in the Thames.
It is. And
not actually told in the continent of Africa. It's told about that trip.
Yeah.
But it's actually narrated by an old sea captain who's relating his experiences, first-person account. On a boat in the River Thames, waiting to go somewhere.
Which brings us back to literature.
Exactly, 1984.
Orwell was one who was always against using big fancy words, like Bukowski. Bukowski's writing is amazing for its lack of adjectives, and I think Orwell was also very, very careful. If you've got a less fancy word, use it. If you can use less words, use less. Always try and describe with the most the greatest efficiency of language.
I don't think that's always true, though. I don't think that's always the best way to go. I mean, some people have obviously made that their thing, and that's become a kind of a trademark or so. Mm-hmm. But I like, you won't find Dostoevsky dropping out adjectives and being terse and curt. He's He'll do a paragraph that's like 3 pages long.
Well, they had a lot more spare time in the 19th century.
But it's a different style of writing. It exposes what they're talking about in layer. Jack Kerouac was supposed to have written the Subterraneans in 9 days, and On the Road in 3 weeks.
Right.
And
didn't he write something on a length of toilet paper as well?
That's what he used to modify his typewriter. And the roll of paper on it, he used to modify it so it took these giant rolls of printer paper, and then it would just like feed in, and it would be continuous. Right. It would never have to change the page. Right. You'd just keep going. But he would do Benzedrine. Yeah. He would do large doses of Benzedrine, and he would write, for days and days, day and night, and just go until he absolutely dropped.
Right. Don't try that at home, kids.
Don't try that at.
I think some of the best literature is a study in human psychology.
Absolutely, and by extension, the study of the psychology of the writer.
Yeah.
If it's original and authentic, and it's coming from their unique experience, then it will, by definition, be unique.
And in fiction, every one of those characters in the book is an extension of the author's mind. And so, however they react, you obviously need to find yourself in another person's shoes. if you're writing about a serial killer, you don't have to be one to do that. But you do have to get into their heads to a certain extent.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to use your head to do that. So there's in a sense, you put a bit of yourself into that, deranged human being. And that's always interesting when you look back at characters, if you're writing characters in fiction, that you've created characters that are an extension of you, even though they're quite different from you.
They have to have an element of truth to them, and from them to have that element of truth, they have to be something that you've seen or experienced or mulled over or something. There must be a heightened sense of truth in them.
And Conrad in particular, he sailed around mostly through Southeast Asia. He wrote another fantastic story set there called The Secret Share, which I absolutely love. It's set in the Gulf of Siam. But you can see that, with Heart of Darkness, he didn't travel up the Congo River. I mean, he had to imagine what that was like. And it comes to a certain point when the author has to just push the boat on ahead of them.
Yeah, you've got to make shit up.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is that we're losing literature.
Yeah.
Is that most of the books available now are cookbooks and self-help books and, adventure stories and vampire trilogies, and that we're losing the art of writing because of that, because people aren't really reading those books anymore. There's no market for literature. I saw a graph in a magazine about book sales, and it goes like this, and then on one side you've got the best-selling books, and it's those genre fictions and the romance, historical romance and romance novels and blah, 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 all the way down through the different categories. And they go down and down and down and down and down. At the very, very bottom, there's a tiny, indecipherable, indiscernible, tiny little blip. And it says literature. And that's where we're at. We're losing that. And I think eventually we will lose it completely.
I don't know. It's like, okay... we stopped using the horse so much when the engine came along, but it didn't eliminate the horse. I think the same thing happens. Literature's there. I mean, it's an incredibly handy way to dip into a wonderful psychological adventure. I mean, Heart of Darkness will fit in your back pocket, and it's like, and yet it takes you to a faraway place. It's so intense. And there's no way you could have a movie do that. And you create the movie in your own head, because you're reading the author's descriptions and their images coming up in your head. That's entirely your own invention. So the idea that means of entertainment, let's say, is going to disappear. No one's going to be delving into Kafka
It's already
anymore.
virtually disappeared. There is who's the new Kafka? Who's the new Hermann Hesse? Who's the new Heinrich Boll? Who's the new Andre Gide? I don't think they exist anymore.
No, because they were of their time, and in our time, you're right. There aren't great authors that we can even think up. Who
Certainly not Stephen King and Dan Brown and Michener or any of those guys. They're writing commercial genre fiction. Yeah. That's not strictly speaking literature.
No.
Of course, if you want to read a nice little piece of literature, modern literature, The End of Everything by Jimi Fritz.
Yeah.
JimiFritz.ca. That's JimiFritz.ca. Plug away.
This is my creation on bookshelves and all good bookstores.
The self-portrait on the front.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. That's
Gorilla Billy.
Beginning of my transition from gorilla to human. I'm a gorilla and a human. Anyway.
So tell us about the book, Greg. What's it about?
Guerrilla Tactics. It's a memoir about my 20-odd years running a conservation organization out of London, UK, for protection of gorillas in the wild, Rwanda, Congo, Uganda. I did that for 20 years, had all kinds of adventures. Were
the gorillas grateful for your efforts or not?
No.
They never said not a single thank you, right?
Not even a smile.
Not even a single thank you, I know.
Not a thank you, no.
Selfish bastards.
But, I carry on. I got used to their standoffishness, their indifference.
Complete indifference to your trying to save them.
Yeah, I'll tell you what spending time with gorillas really taught me, though. It taught me about human psychology, because I understood how much of what we get up to and think is unique to us is actually shared with the other great apes, at least. And, a lot of monkeys, too. If you watch them for a while, you say, oh, wow, I do that.
So, literature, yeah. Is there any hope? I just got back from Paris at the Shakespeare Company, and you'd stand outside there and you'd think that there was hope, because it's a fantastic bookstore. It's got everything, all the good stuff, and there's a lineup around the block. But unfortunately, it's not because people are crazy about books. It's because it's a kind of a tourist attraction, because it's been there since the 1700s, and all the famous authors hung out there, and it was a real hub. Now it's kind of a tourist attraction. Yeah. Although it's still a very good bookstore, like City Lights in San Francisco, same thing.
I think what's great is that with a knowledge of literature, you still have it within your power to inspire people who haven't read by telling them about these books, and you get them cornered one night in the Gazebo here, and you say, listen, do you know about this book? And you read it, it'll blow your mind. I do. I mean, I buy a lot of books. I see books that I've read before. I just picked up like Confederacy of Dunces by Kennedy O'Toole. Fantastic book. Yes.
And, so I'll buy a copy. I've read it a couple of times, and I probably won't read it a third time, but if I see it in a bookstore or whatever, I'll, for $2, I'll buy it, and then I'll give it to somebody. I do that with, Vonnegut and Tom Robbins and a few other. Right, when if I see stuff that comes across and, that I've read before, then I do disseminate. I put it in the free library books, the free library boxes, around the neighborhood, of which there are several and many. But if you look in those boxes too, and I do, it's mostly, just Pulp Fiction. Yeah. And cookbooks and self-help stuff.
Well, they may be the ones that they're willing to give away. They might be keeping the classics at home.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. They're You're such an optimist, Craig.
Absolutely, the world needs optimists. Far too many pessimists around.
That's true. We need to stamp them out.
What about Sid Arthur? He's a great writer.
Sid Arthur?
Yeah. I think he's a Cockney writer.
Is he a wrestler?
No, he's a wrestler turned Cockney writer. He wrote a fantastic book called Herman Hesse.
It's time now for Recipe of the Week.
Recipe of the Week.
Here we go. This is from The Voice of the Ville, which is a magazine put out internally in Pentonville Prison in England, a particularly notorious prison. And this is a recipe section in the back. It's called Bang Up Recipes. Mm-hmm.
Bang up being the English term for being stuck inside.
Exactly. Banged up, locked up in Pentonville Prison. And this is imaginative recipes that are dreamed up from stuff that you can get from the canteen, or stuff that's available, obviously, because you can't go to the corner store to get ingredients. Mm-hmm. This one's called Jaffer Cakes and Custard.
Ah, intriguing.
Grab your pens and papers now and write this down.
No, some of these guys who go in, they were chefs in real life.
Yeah.
And they get thrown inside for some misunderstanding, but they bring their talents with them.
This one has obviously had a high degree of culinary proficiency.
Lovely. I love to hear that they're doing well.
And prowess.
Yeah.
Prepare custard as instructed on packet. Mm-hmm. So you got to read the packet, right? Make that custard. Break up the Jaffa cakes into pieces and add to the custard.
Oh, okay.
Get that?
Yeah. And then?
That's it.
That's it.
It's Jaffa Cakes and Custard.
Fucking rip.
A friend of mine used to say his words of wisdom were, well, everybody's got to do a bit of bird, haven't they?
Yeah, no, I never met a Cockney who wasn't slightly sideways, I mean,
Yeah.
They always had something that fell off the back of a lorry.
Yeah, they were wide boys, right? Exactly. Wide boys.
I remember one guy saying, "Oi, Greg, remember them fancy lamps up in Amsterdam Street? If you noticed they're not there no more, I nicked them."
It's time for Logical Fallacy of the Week.
Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum.
Dun, 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 dun. What is a logical fallacy? It's an invalid collection between a premise and a conclusion. So with any argument, you start off with a premise, you examine your premise. If the premise is sound, then you argue towards the conclusion. If your arguments don't contain any logical fallacies, your conclusion will be correct and true. So there's many logical fallacies. I think we did ad hoc propto ergo hoc last time. Yeah. So we're going to do, let's see, what should we do now? The Texas sharpshooter fallacy.
Sounds good.
That's the name of this fallacy. Comes from the most common illustrative example. A target shooter claims that he can always hit the bullseye. He aims at the side of a barn, shoots a hole in the wood, and then goes up and draws a target around the hole. So that's the fallacy of the myth. It refers to someone who chooses the criteria for success or failure after they know the outcome. Okay.
Well, is that a wrap?
Okay, we're going to wrap it up now, and that was the Gazebo Show with Jimmy, Fritz, and
Gorilla Billy, and we'll see you soon. Make sure you check out our websites, jimmyfritz.ca and bluegorillagiving.ca.
Okay,
See you next week.
Like, subscribe.
Like and subscribe, yeah.